LinkedIn News.
The theory is that our life is a box and our grief is this ball, and there's a pain button.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, the ball takes up the entire box. The theory is that over time, the grief ball shrinks. And so you're moving through life and it's hitting that button less often. But I don't think the ball of grief ever shrinks. I think your life grows. So the box grows. And so what I've really learned is that people need to just focus on growing and expanding your life around your grief, but never have that goal of it going away, because it won't.
That's Hadley Vlahos, a.k.a. Nurse Hadley, hospice nurse and author. I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better. Stay tuned for more on cultivating purpose in your work and what she's learned about living a good life from those whose lives are coming to an end. Make sure you hit that follow button to get new episodes of our show every week. And if you're a regular listener, consider leaving us a review so we can keep bringing you more of the kinds of conversations you love. Hey, everyone. From LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better, a personal development podcast where every week I sit down with some of the world's brightest minds and bravest hearts who use science and story to share strategies for how we can flourish individually, in relationship to others, and to the world around us. Hadley Vlahos, a.k.a. Nurse Hadley, to her 1.9 million TikTok followers, is a hospice nurse, a mother of 3, and now a New York Times bestselling author. Her first book, The In-Between, Unforgettable Encounters During Life's Final Moments, is a memoir about her path to becoming a nurse after an unexpected pregnancy caused her to drop out of college and put her dreams of becoming a writer on pause. But after enrolling in nursing school at age 24, Hadley quickly realized she had found her calling as a hospice care nurse. Today, she's using her platform on TikTok to pull back the curtain on what it's like being a hospice care nurse. It is not all gloomy and sad. She actually says there's a ton of life in hospice care. And she's also trying to destigmatize talking about death. Here's Hadley.
I feel like so many people go into nursing, like they know whenever they're a kid that they want to be a nurse and they have it in them. That was not my journey. I wanted to be an author or a journalist. And then I found out I was pregnant at 19, had my son at 20, and said, I need to find a career that is going to support us. So 3 years later, I became a registered nurse, started working in the hospital as so many new nurses do. And I did a year on night shift. And then they offered me a position in the nursing home as a manager. We didn't really do hospice in nursing school. We weren't really exposed to it. We had one day of either home health or hospice, and I got home health. So I didn't really know what hospice was, but in the nursing home, we had hospice patients. And I am running around like a crazy person with 40 patients, just trying to keep my head above water. And I would watch the hospice nurses come into my patient's room and just sit there for an hour with that one patient. And just whatever they needed, they sit there and talk to them. It was so calm and peaceful. And so I actually went into hospice just being like, I need a break. I am so burnt out just trying to take care of so many patients at once. And I want to be one-on-one. So that was 8 years ago. I made the leap to hospice, and I've not looked back at all.
I mean, it's interesting to even think about a career pivot that's like, it was meant to give you a little bit of peace, right? You were optimizing probably for that peace and calm, but actually ended up finding something that feels much more like a calling now.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is where I'm meant to be.
And how did you figure that part out?
So there was actually one specific incident where I remember thinking to myself, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is where I'm meant to be, which is a patient I had who I call Carl, and he was pretty grumpy, just didn't really want me to be there. He didn't want anyone in his home. And I was trying to connect with him, and he kept watching sports. And I said, I know nothing about sports. I'm a single mom. I don't watch anything. Start teaching me. And so he did, and he liked that. And then that gradually extended to him watching the news. He'd say, I just am bedbound. I don't have anything else to do but watch TV all day. So every time I'd show up, he'd be like, okay, this is the news you need to know. And here's the college sports team. And a couple of days before he died, he looked at me and said, thank you so much for giving me something to look forward to instead of death. And I remember in that moment, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm meant to be.
Wow. So if we take a step back, what does a hospice nurse actually do? So you saw this person come in and sit in the corner and just sit with one person. But what are you doing during that time?
So we check their vital signs. We're going to make sure that they're physically okay first, make sure they're not in any pain, and then move to the spiritual, the mental. Just, talk to me. How are you doing? Most people go through this life review phase where they're realizing I'm dying, and they start to kind of reflect on their life. And so I get to hear all these stories, and I'm like, tell me, like, I want to hear your advice. I want to hear about your life. What are you thinking about? Like, what stands out as so important to you as you're like reviewing your life?
Is it like everybody has this experience? Is it something that you ask people to think about?
I would say everyone does have it. Sometimes people aren't as close to us and they won't tell us about it. Sometimes they'll tell their kids about it. I try to have them tell me about it, but I do believe that it's part of that process if you are able to realize, some of my patients aren't able to realize that they're dying.
Sure.
But whenever they are able to realize that and they've decided to come on hospice, people do go through what we call life review.
What are you learning from people's life reviews?
I'm definitely learning what's important. What I always found so interesting is that you hear from people that say, like, oh, don't work too much, like you'll regret it. And I do find that people do care about their work, and it doesn't really matter what they do. I've had people who were school bus drivers tell me how many children that they took care of by driving a school bus and how much they loved it. I feel like it's such a big part of our life and finding something that you love. But I feel like that's contrary to what a lot of people think, where people are like, oh, you never get on your deathbed and you like think about work. I don't really think that's true.
You're like, I will. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
I will. Yeah.
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 People do. Something else that I found to be really interesting was, of course, people talk about physical possessions and keeping up with the Joneses. And at first, I remember thinking, okay, the way to live is to have no physical possessions. It doesn't matter at all. And what I've kind of learned through listening to people over the years is that whatever house you buy or whatever car you have, it's just that you're making yourself happy and not trying to impress someone else. And so I've had patients tell me about their antique cars that they loved collecting.
Right.
They loved fixing up. I've had women tell me about their home that they're in that they just have lived in for 30 years and they love it so much. And so I think what's more important is just doing it for yourself more than anything.
Right. I mean, how many times are we doing things for other people? Or, when people say, I wish I hadn't worked so hard, I also think about the fact that a lot of people maybe are doing work in which they don't find meaning or they haven't created a sense of meaning. Do you get the sense that like there's a difference between the people you talk to who were really involved in their work, like this bus driver, versus those who go, I just kind of did it because I had to or it was expected of me?
Yeah, but I think people can find joy in it no matter what it is.
Yes.
And it's interesting to me because I've taken care of what people would call celebrities who were not happy with what they did, and they've even given back to so much. And then the same day, I'll go take care of someone like a bus driver who was so happy with their work. And I think it's just so personal. But being able to find something that you love no matter what, I think really does matter.
Well, and so you'd also talk about this idea of a good death. Is the life review, in your opinion, part of a good death, or what makes up a good death?
Yes, part of that life review, I think, is not necessarily that you're happy with everything, but that you come to peace with it and don't have regrets in a way. Because I had this patient stands out to me so much. She was so interesting. Was talking about regrets and had said that he had come to this conclusion that he had no regrets. And the two examples he gave me was that when he was in his 20s, he was fired for smoking weed. And he said, if I had not been fired, then I would not have been in a grocery store on a weekday, which is where I met my wife. And then he said that he spilled coffee on himself one day, had to turn around, and he said that he saw a little dog on the side of the road, and he said that dog became my reason for living once my wife died. And so he had gone through this life review and had come to this conclusion that you can't have regrets because then you would not end up where you are, and anything that you would consider to be a regret still brought you to where you are.
Yeah. I want to ask you about when you're working with patients about the in-between. I'm curious if you can share a story and maybe a little more about what that is that you've seen happen for people.
Yeah, the in-between is what I consider to be this time period that people go through where they are what I consider to be our world and whatever comes next. And people will go through talking to usually deceased loved ones that they say are in the room that I cannot see. And so they will talk to me and they'll talk to other people there as well. I was very confused by it at first. I definitely don't learn about that in nursing school.
Or really anywhere else.
Yeah. And I remember talking to my coworkers and they're like, no, this is normal. Like, that's part of the process. It happens to everyone. And I live in the Deep South. So I was like, maybe it's like a Christian thing. And then I started to learn that it doesn't matter what your beliefs are, no beliefs at all. People specifically have their deceased loved ones come, and it brings a lot of peace and calm, and it's very beautiful to witness.
Do you feel like they're in a different state when they're having that experience, or is it like they're completely like, they're with it, they're lucid and...
They're with it. I recently had a patient talk to, I think, his brother that had passed, and then immediately turn to me and be like, how's Callie, my daughter?
You're like, she's great.
Yeah.
She's thriving.
I feel like I'm the one who's like out of it.
I mean, a lot of people may not ever have the experience of being in hospice. I remember my grandfather died, and so I was at a hospice facility a number of times while he was passing away. And like, it's funny, I mean, it was a beautiful place, but it's like this thing that you think would be really tough and hard and sad. And like, sure it was, but I didn't feel this sense of like, oh my God, this heaviness. While I was in there. I felt very like, I don't know, it felt like kind of light and easy. And I think part of it probably was the nurses who were so kind and friendly, and like they didn't feel like they were mourning. They felt like they were just walking around, living their lives, doing their jobs, but also having very normal experiences, which is something we don't think of is related to death. Yeah,
I always say I feel like there's a lot of life in end-of-life care. I think people think about the death so heavily, but in reality, if I take care of a patient for 6 months, which is what hospice is supposed to be, their death is just a couple of hours of that 6 months that I get to spend with them. So it's such a small part of it, in my opinion.
Is that what you'd call like the spiritual side of it? Or what's you said the spiritual and mental, is it just you bringing people to the point of like being with them as they're realizing, oh, I am dying, and what does this mean, and their own fear? And how do you comfort people?
Well, we do have a chaplain, so I don't want to take all the credit, but we all do it. Even our nursing assistants and our social workers, we're all there for them. Some people are very comfortable in having no beliefs. Other people will have believed their entire life in something greater, and they'll start to question it during that time period. People are always so interested in that side. Like, do people who are, say, Christians have a more calming death? And I said that what I've realized over the years is that people who are comfortable with what they believe, no matter what it is, are the ones who have the most peaceful deaths.
Interesting. So it doesn't matter which thing you're believing in or whatever you're signing up for, even if it's no belief at all.
Yeah, I've had people be very comfortable with being like, there's nothing's going to happen. I made peace with that many years ago, and I'm okay.
I imagine that in that space, you become a real advocate for a lot of these people, and maybe even one of their closer friends, right? As this man, Carl, who was able to share so much of himself with you, was able to do. What's the role for you that you play as an advocate? And like, is there a line that you draw for yourself where you're like, oh, I'm not going to get overly involved with this person?
Yeah, it's such a gray area being in people's homes. It's so much more intimate than the hospital. And because you get to know them, it's not like you're just taking care of them for one day. A line that I've seen coworkers cross in the past and I've gotten close to that I do set for myself is that I will not get involved in any family dynamics that do not harm my patient, such as we will have a lot of family arguments, such as like who gets possessions after they die. And that is a hard line because you don't ever want one daughter to feel like the hospice nurse is taking sides. But whenever it comes to patient care and what they want, I will always advocate for them and whatever my patient wants. And there's been many times that I've had to have hard conversations.
I can imagine. Yeah. How do you draw lines or boundaries around just your work and the rest of your life?
Yeah, I was not very good at it in the beginning. I've gotten a lot better. I think that something I did wrong in the beginning is that I would get close to my patients. I would know them very well. And what I would say is when they were getting close to death, call me if you need anything, because I can answer it in like 5 seconds and I want to be there for you.
Be there. Yeah.
And what, of course, everyone would praise me and say, oh, Hadley's the best and all of that. So I thought I was doing a good job. And then I eventually realized, of course, I was burning out because I was on call 24/7. And then also what that was doing was causing distrust for the rest of the team. And my patients and families would be like, oh, no, we need to call Hadley. And so it was having this double negative effect. So now I am like, okay, I am about to get off work with my patients and my families. If you need something tonight, our on-call nurse, her name is Abigail. She's amazing. She's been a nurse for 2 years. I trained her. You're going to love her. And so I hype them up. And I also set that boundary of I'm going to be off and I will talk to you when I'm back. And I think that that's important. It's helped everyone.
Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't, I'm sure you didn't think of it at the time, because at the time you're going, oh, I'm doing something that's like positive for other people.
Absolutely.
And I'm just going the extra mile to be supportive. Yeah. And so then it's opened up opportunities for other people to show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of practices do you do when you're not working that help you stay restored?
Yeah, it's very cliche. I go to therapy. I work out. Get good sleep. Just it's helped a lot. I used to not be as good about that. Try to eat healthy, and take time off. And I don't, unless it's an emergency and work's calling, I don't answer the phone.
And how do you do that with having a TikTok? You seem like the kind of person who has their dream job, right? It's like, even if it's not someone else's dream, the idea that you're able to do this work and to have a TikTok and to do all these things, how do you manage that?
It's difficult at times.
Fair. I really appreciate that you share it's difficult. Yes.
I'm learning. Something that my therapist has been recently working on with me is that Nurse Hadley is not all of me. And it is okay to be like Nurse Hadley, like right now, and then go and have a side of me that only my close family and friends know. And it's definitely also helped me with mean comments. Whenever people say stuff, I'm like, oh, well, they're talking about that person. They don't know me, though. They don't actually know me. And unless it's like actually my family, my friends, my therapist giving me feedback, I don't really need to listen to it because they don't know all of me.
Do you check the comments then?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, but I imagine it's probably more tempered than like maybe when you first started.
Yeah, 99% of people are nice. And so that's what I try to focus on. Yeah,
that's great. I've heard you say, and you wrote in the book, that you're not afraid of death. So I'm curious, what else can you share about that?
I personally believe that there's an afterlife, so that definitely helps feeling like I will see everyone again. But also, I know that TV shows and the news only show us just the horrific ways that you can die. And well, as an advocacy group that I spoke for in November, they did a study and it said that 80% of what we are shown on TV is those horrific, sudden, scary deaths. In reality, the vast majority of us are going to die naturally, so to say, or slowly. And we have medications to give. It doesn't have to be painful. I think a lot of people fear that pain and the suddenness of it. I know that my chances are that I will probably die on hospice. And I'm going to say, give me everything that you will prescribe and make it pain-free.
Thank you.
And I've seen many people. It can be very peaceful.
Before we go on break, let's recap. We often hear that towards the end of people's lives, they reflect on their careers and have regrets about how much they worked. But that's not Hadley's experience. For her patients who chose to find joy and meaning in their work, they felt positively about their careers as their lives came to an end. So it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you find love in what you're doing, you won't have regrets later. And we're back with Hadley Vlahos. One of the things that you talk about is this idea of being death positive, like your household is death positive.
I like to think of it as talking about death just like you would someone having a baby, like how you just openly talk about it. And you just say, this happened, and you don't say words such as like giving up whenever people come onto hospice or all of those negative words. If your friend says, oh, my mom is getting sick or my mom has died, you don't change the topic. And a lot of people think they have the best intentions, and they think that they are like, oh, let me distract you and like tell you something else. But being able to be like, okay, let's talk about that and just listen.
What do you say to people who are like, I don't know how to talk about that? Like even just like that, I don't know how to say that and then just sit comfortably because I'm so uncomfortable with it.
I think just listening, a lot of new hospice nurses that I talk to are like, I don't know what to say. Like whenever a patient comes to me and they're like, I'm really scared to die. And I say, you don't. You listen. They know that you don't have any more answers than anyone else does, but they just want to feel heard. So you just say, tell me about that. Why are you feeling that way? And sometimes just talking through it and feeling like someone's listening to you can make a big difference. But I say, don't, offer advice unless it's, do you want a visit from our chaplain or do you want me to do this? But they don't expect you to have the answers.
Right.
They just want to feel heard.
Do you think there's something different about you, like from a sensitivity perspective or from an emotional intelligence perspective, that makes it easier to have these experiences? Because I can imagine there's so many people listening to this that are going to go, I could never have that career, or I could never work in a hospital because it'd just be too much.
I was raised with family in the funeral business, which I know helps a lot. But I have learned a lot of that on the job. I wouldn't say that I went into it being the absolute best. And I've learned how to have those conversations, and I've learned how to listen a lot better. And I really do think that a lot of people could do it. I really do. And every hospice company should have volunteer program. And you can sit there with patients while their caregiver like runs an errand. You don't have to touch the patient at all. You're just providing a presence and calling the caregiver if they do need something. And then we have 11th hour volunteers who are so special. They are the ones who make sure that no one dies alone.
Oh, wow.
And so we'll call them if we have a patient who might die alone, and they will stay and just be there.
If we switch to the people who are actually caretaking during this process, because they're such a huge part of this, what advice or thoughts do you have for people who are maybe just about to move into this realm of going into hospice care for someone that they love?
It's a marathon, not a sprint, is what I always tell my caregivers. It can feel very overwhelming in the beginning. And although there are many people who are only on hospice for a week, the reality is it might be a couple of months. And it's a lifestyle adjustment. For some people, it's years. And they just need to learn to adjust to it and know that they are so appreciated and so underlooked in our society. I wish that we gave more credit to caregivers. It's such a difficult job. But I think that whenever people look at it as a lifestyle change for a little bit, it's a little bit better than trying to be like, they're almost thrown into the role of being a nurse.
Yeah.
And it's difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think it's also interesting, like most people who are in, older Gen Z, millennial, are experiencing caregiving as parents, but also with having aging parents. And it's I think one of the first times this has happened that
it is.
This is our experience, is we have to do both, because a lot of us are older parents because we wait to have kids for whatever reason. And then our parents are already, they're not the grandparents caring for our babies in a lot of instances. They're the ones that we're taking care of. What advice would you give to people who are experiencing that?
It's very difficult. They just named it. It's called the sandwich generation.
Oh, nice. Yes, yes.
Yeah. I would say that I've only been seeing that for the last couple years. And that, personally, I just think we need more resources for caregivers. I am seeing so many more people now who cannot retire because they're having to work longer. They still have kids at home, even if they're 20, and they're also caring for their parents. I see many people without resources to be able to say hire a caregiver if they want to go do something for a few hours. And it's extremely difficult. As far as advice goes, I would say that to accept help. You cannot do it all. And if a friend is saying, let me bring you some groceries, accept help. That would be my biggest. A lot of people, I think, want to try to do it all.
Do it all, yeah.
And I understand that completely, but it's a unique situation to be in, but it's becoming less unique.
Right.
And it's difficult.
So one of the things that you just made me think about is this idea of community. We're experiencing a change in the way that we think about our communities, right? And I think there's social media as a big part of that. I think, technology, I think the way that many of us have shifted away from being inside of religions or inside of churches every weekend or, having things that we do with our families. What are your thoughts about, how we build up community, knowing that all of us are going to go through this experience? You don't have to have the answer for how we rectify it, but I do just notice it as something that likely our parents and their parents had that we don't have in the same way.
Yeah, it's definitely very difficult. The positives I see with social media, which I've told people about, is that I was one point feeling very overwhelmed with so many people talking to me that I couldn't respond to. And something that's so important to me that I'm now seeing is that people are talking to each other now in the comments, and they're saying, they're asking me a question. Someone's like, oh, my dad actually went through this, and this is what I would do. And I'm seeing people even exchanging information and following each other and having that community, which I think social media can do that in a really good way. But at the same time, definitely seeing less people at the grief support groups, the in-person things that I think is not necessarily as good. I wish that people were having more of those in-person connections.
I think COVID did a lot of that too.
It did.
Yeah.
It definitely did. And I don't know if we've necessarily gotten back into what we used to do, but I hope that we do.
And is the online community the reason that you think you have so many followers on TikTok, that people are going, oh my God, this is the place I can go to maybe not just learn about this, but to connect with other people?
Yeah, I definitely hope so. I think a lot of people just find the stories interesting as well. That's my hope for it, though. I think that people see themselves and their own family members in these stories, which is why I think that they like them so much. And I love that.
Yeah, and they feel seen, right? I'm sure in a way that maybe they haven't.
Yeah, I did a little series about common ways that some people will react to someone dying, and said, it's not unusual for someone to just start cleaning the house. Or I walk in and they're like, do I need the Social Security card? And have you called the funeral home? And it's not because they don't care. It's just that is their way of coping with it. And the amount of comments that were like, you just healed a part of me to see everyone else in these comments relating. So it wasn't really me. It was that they read 1,000 comments of other people being like, this is how I was when my mom died. And they're like, I finally don't feel like a bad person.
Wow. And so in that too, I'm curious what you've learned about grief.
So much. A big one that I learned, this is a theory called the box and the ball. And I have adjusted it actually based on a TikTok comment. But the theory is that our life is a box and our grief is this ball, and there's a pain button. And at the beginning, the ball takes up the entire box. Anything that you do in life shakes that box. And the ball is constantly hitting that pain button. The theory is that over time, the grief ball shrinks. And so you're moving through life and it's hitting that button less often. But whenever the button is hit, the pain is the same as day one. The pain never lessens. A TikTok comment that I've now seen multiple times is that someone said, I don't think the ball of grief ever shrinks. I think your life grows. So the box grows. And so now I say it differently, even to my patients and their families, that your life box grows and your grief is still hitting that pain button. It's just less often, but it never goes away. And so what I've really learned is that people need to not beat themselves up if 5 years down the road, they just have a day where they're like, oh my gosh, it's been 5 years, but I have to lay in bed today. I can't handle this. It's normal.
I'm right back where I started, and that's normal.
And it's not like a mountain that you need to get to the top of, and then all of a sudden you'll be okay. It's just focus on growing and expanding your life around your grief, but never have that goal of it going away, because it won't.
I imagine that like part of the reason that we have such a tough time with grief is that culturally we don't talk much about death. We avoid it. So then when it happens to someone around us, it shakes up so much. Have you seen other cultures where that is going better than we're doing it today in the U.S. or in Western cultures?
Yeah, I would definitely say Chinese cultures are better at it from the patients I've had. I mean, minimal experience, but in my experience, they are much more likely to just talk about it in a very frank way. And then I have had some Muslim patients where they have some really cool traditions and cultures around death, such as washing the body. And normally I will clean a patient once they die. And they said, we need to be the ones to do this and tell us what to do. So I stood back and they washed her body and prepared her. And it was really beautiful to watch.
Wow. I'm curious what other advice you might have for us just from what you've learned from people who are passing away. You mentioned kids, you mentioned work. What other advice do you have for people around how they might think about living?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people tell me is that it goes really fast. And I think about that a lot. And I think a big part of not being death positive is just thinking if I don't think about death, then out of sight, out of mind. In reality, not only because of my work, but I think about death every day. I'm constantly thinking about, will I be happy on my deathbed one day? And whenever you frame stuff in that way, life becomes exciting. And it's a good way to look at it. I don't think that you should think about death whenever you're staring it in its face.
Yeah, I mean, I love that like you frame it as like, hey, will I be happy on my deathbed? And that makes life, that opens life up and opens up options and possibilities. Yeah. What are you still like excited to do as we're talking about, happy life and trying to make that something meaningful?
Yeah. A current issue that we have is that respite care is really underutilized, which is where Medicare, the biggest health insurance, will pay for up to 5 days for you to go to a facility if your caregiver is having issues. Especially where I am in the South, it's very underutilized because nursing homes is usually the facility for that. And the caregiver can't stay. And so they'll say, well, I've been caring for, my husband for 3 years at home. I'm not going to risk not being there when he dies. So I want to open a nonprofit hospice house. My idea for the nonprofit hospice house is that wife would have her own bed to stay in. She would be invited to. She'd get meals and she'd get to recharge. And then I want to do living funerals there. I have sat at way too many funerals where a patient has personally shared with me that they feel like no one cares about them and no one really loves them. And then I will sit at their funeral and hear these eulogies of the most beautiful ways that they impacted people. And I keep thinking to myself, they should have heard that.
Right.
And I do believe that they hear it. But whenever they're alive, and they should be able to also share their own thoughts. And so I really want to host living funerals where kind of like a wedding reception, everyone comes around the dinner table and cheers to someone's life like they would at a funeral, but with the patient there.
With them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It makes so much more sense that we would do something like that for someone prior if we know.
Right, of course.
So that they can actually feel that and soak it up and go, oh gosh, all of this time maybe I thought these things, but they're not true. And hopefully we can get better at sharing those things earlier.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to have you complete these 3 statements for me, Hadley.
Okay.
The first is, better humans are.
Better humans are happy with their own choices.
Better work is.
Better work feeds your soul.
And a better world has.
Better world has kinder people.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for being here. This was great. And I loved exploring this topic that is, I think, has been so off limits for people, but is so like relieving to just have a conversation about. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That was Hadley Vlahos, author of The In-Between, Unforgettable Encounters During Life's Final Moments. You can find her on TikTok under the handle Nurse Hadley. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with the first person who comes to mind. You never know how it could help them out. And support people like you in finding our show by leaving us a rating before you go. While you're at it, write a 1-sentence review telling me and the team what you love about Everyday Better. And as always, you can get me in your inbox by signing up for our weekly personal development newsletter, giving you practical tips on how to level up with small steps every day. Find it in our show notes for this episode or at linkedin.com/everydaybetter. That's linkedin.com/everydaybetter. Everyday Better is a production of LinkedIn News. The show is produced by Grace Rubin and Emily Reeves. Asaf Gadron is our sound engineer. He makes sure we sound good in the studio. Joe DeGiorgi mixed our show. Enrique Montalvo is the executive producer of LinkedIn Editorial Productions. Dave Pond is head of news production. Courtney Koop is head of LinkedIn Original Audio and Video. Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. And I'm Leah Smart. Thanks for coming with me, and I'll see you next week.